This is East Coast DNA. I'm your host, Darcy Walsh, and today's featured guest, Avery Dakin. Welcome, Avery.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So, Avery, we're familiar to each other from about almost a year ago this time, maybe a little over a year ago. I think, was it self-preservation that you were
Yes,
promoting at the
that's
time?
right. Yeah, I just shot you an email in the dark and you responded right away and you were like, yeah, super cool.
So I know right after that, you were new to me at the time. The podcast was fairly new at the time, and we were doing featured singles, so that's where we fit you in. And I know that ended up being popular, and I started seeing your name popping up all over the place, playing with lots of cool bands up, especially like the HRM area. But your background, I know that you teach music as well.
I do, yeah.
So is that where your musical career started? It's like, were you trained professionally and then went into teaching, or were you musician first and teaching pays the bills kind of thing?
Right. Well, so I all my life had studied piano and then I went to Acadia with the piano kind of principal kind of focus. And then from there I specialized in composition.
Hmm.
So I actually ended up graduating with a Bachelor of Music in composition from Acadia. And then
Cool.
from there, I never thought that I would want to teach. I thought that I really wanted to um, kind of go back to school for music therapy eventually. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But honestly, like I've just fallen in love with teaching. So I might end up kind of following that path a little bit more seriously in the next couple of years. But yeah, definitely musician first, fell into teaching because that's what you do. And then the band kind of just organically started when I started kind of taking my songwriting more seriously as well.
And if anybody Googles your name, you're not the speech pathologist.
No,
There's
yeah,
another person out there. I stopped for a second. I'm like, well, I mean, it's possible, but yeah, no,
that would
different
be
person.
cool. Maybe we should be friends.
Yeah. So I think your catalog that I'm familiar with would start around 2020, maybe.
Mhm. Yeah, I released a couple singles in 2019 off of my 2020 EP.
Okay. So did you start with like studio sessions, or did you like you have a fairly large performance band? It's a seven-piece band?
Yes.
Yeah. So did you start off with a band, or was it more you wrote some songs and put together some studio sessions to record your first album?
Yeah, it was that way.
Okay.
I had written some songs in my last couple years at Acadia that I thought, okay, no, these sound like something that I would want to develop. Um, so I had a friend from school actually who ended up helping me with some demos, and he actually produced the title track of my EP, Settle Down. His name's Caleb Elias Gilman.
Hmm.
Um, and so then after that, Caleb moved away. And I got in contact with Mark Bashinsky, who is kind of, I think he was actually, we met at a show of my friend Carmel Michaels. I don't know if you know her, but she's an awesome songwriter as well. And so we got talking. He was like, "Oh yeah, your stuff is great. Let's get to work together." And then he introduced me to a couple folks from the band, which is kind of how the ball got rolling.
Okay.
So yeah, it was just kind of a natural, like, okay, let's try this out. And it just so happened that we gelled really well as a group. And so like a couple of friends from before and a couple of friends from that era kind of all came together, and that started the first iteration of my band.
And I believe currently you would definitely support it. You got one of the friendliest drummers in the scene out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a great guy, and he's yeah, I would say that Matt joining the band was kind of like the moment that things started to open up a little bit because of, he's an extremely committed band
Hmm.
member as well. And it was funny how that happened. Like we were in another band together. Um, it was my first show with this band, and he just off the cuff was like, "Hey, if you ever need a drummer for your band, let me know. I'm looking." And I was like, "Well, actually, I do need a drummer." So it just worked out. And then, I kind of felt reinvigorated by his energy. So
Yeah, yeah. With the rest of the band, so there's six more people then. Do you want to
Yes.
do a quick rundown of who are they the
Yes.
same people the last couple of years, or has there been a couple
There's
rotating
been some
members?
lineup changes.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what we currently have, and this is going beyond a band at this point. These are just like my best buds as well.
Yeah.
So I'm pumped to talk about them. But and you know all of them from our little music week chat as well. But so we have Sean on lead guitar. Dan is on rhythm guitar, and Dan had been taking a little bit of a break and came back. So he's the only one that you didn't meet.
Okay.
We've got our two guitars. Henry is on bass. We've got Joel Hughes McKay on trumpet and Dylan Hay on trombone and synth now actually as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
So the sound with that many people, there's a lot of different influences going into it.
Mhm.
But now with your new material, not to dismiss what's come out to date,
Right.
but the reason that you're here today is because you have some new material out. Now, you just recently had the campaign for In Bloom or Bloom?
For Bloom,
Bloom,
yeah.
yeah. So, is that tied in with your new single, or they're separate? You're like just constantly putting out new projects?
So my album of the same title, Bloom, is
Mhm.
coming out on the 7th of July.
Yeah.
So yeah, Bloom was the first single, and Hurricane Season, which I just put out yesterday, is its second and final single.
Mhm.
And so yeah, like you said, right, there's a lot of influences coming into the band. One cool thing about making this record was the fact that I got to work with producer Alex Mead, and
Cool.
he has like such a rich like knowledge of the style that I want to kind of situate myself in. And so it's been really cool working with him, and he and I really, I think, have a lot of the same ideals creatively and a lot of the same like desires of what we want to hear.
Mhm.
So it just felt extremely validating to get to like present music to someone and they are like, yeah, I can see exactly how this is going to sound. And he would listen to the reference tracks that I would send him, and he really took it so seriously, kind of trying to deliver my vision as well. So I think that was a really cool element for making the record. And then also we did work with the band for some of the tracks as well. So those influences still are present in some way, I think, as well.
And now the genre, which we always fumble when we talk about that on these episodes because
Yeah.
nobody likes to be put in one
It's
specific
hard.
box.
Yeah.
But for the type of music, a little bit more soulful, maybe worked
Yeah.
into it. I
Yeah.
and I know that some of the artists, and we'll get into it in a minute, some of the people that you're working with and performing with in the near future,
Mhm.
definitely all in that same category.
Yeah.
But like Lindsay that we mentioned, Lizzie Meisner and the Seventh Mystic.
Yes.
And so that's definitely in that same
Yeah.
bucket sound wise.
Mhm.
You will be performing with Shay Pitts as well, I believe.
Yep.
So I
Shape
know,
it in lavender.
yeah, now Shay Pitts and Lavender together would definitely be
Mhm.
more, uh, not necessarily like a hip hop, but like more of a dancey type thing. And then I know some Shay Pitts stuff that would be more in line with your type of singing,
Yes,
like
definitely.
sound wise. Now Lavender being in the new single,
Mhm.
that's a little bit of a different sound for
Totally.
Avery.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a wonderful song. I
Mhm.
listened to it as soon as I could, but I probably had it play about 4 or 5 times while I was getting ready here this morning too. So I'm not getting sick of it anyway.
That's good news.
Where does that fit into your vision of where you're taking your sound? Because you're obviously allowing collaborations that are taking you in a slightly different path,
Mhm.
but I also know that those two particular artists also sway your way as well. So I
Mhm.
mean, there definitely is an intersection anyway. Is that the plan to kind of
Yeah.
self promote and do a little cross promotion where you guys have that intersection, or is there other new sounds that you're exploring with the new album?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of everything. The reason I reached out to Lavender is the fact that she is so versatile as an artist.
Mhm.
And even beyond that, like I think we just really got along well. We met for the first time at Music Week, actually.
Okay.
Excuse me. And yeah, I really just loved her vibe. I loved her music. I saw the
Mhm.
collab she did with Shay Pitts, and I loved that. I think she's got like, yeah, such a cool approach to her art. So yeah, I am always open to kind of meeting in the middle
Mhm.
because, like, you get told as an artist, like, you need to pick one thing and you need to stick to that. And that's what's marketable about you. But I think that like going beyond being a marketable artist, like is what is like valuable to me as an artist. I want to make stuff that feels exploratory and like, still authentically my sound, which I think hurricane season definitely is.
Mhm.
But allowing for that collaboration, I learned a ton, and I really enjoy kind of bringing those elements in as well. And it was funny because um there's a part where like the beat drops and like the trap beat drums come in and everything, and I was a little bit against it at first, but my producer Alex was like, you know what, just do it, like let's go. And it was funny because the lyric that precedes this change in tone is need to let go of control.
Mhm.
So we kind of laughed about this a little bit, like, okay, no, it's true, like you don't have to be just one thing, you can explore. This is your debut album, let's like explore all the different kind of sounds that you might be able to access there.
And the themes for the first couple songs, I don't know if this was intentional, but Bloom lends itself to spring vibes.
Mhm.
And then even though you're promoting it in the spring, the
Mhm.
follow-up hurricane season definitely for us reminds us of last fall for people
Exactly.
on the East Coast.
Yeah.
So, is there any type of concept that goes
Mhm.
through the album with the sequence of the songs? Is there a little bit of an overlaid story or a sequence of time in
Mhm.
those?
Yeah, absolutely. The album itself is based around the idea of growth. So of course, Bloom is like the most evocative kind of thing for that.
Mhm.
But also, like I find for myself, like going through the seasons each year, I kind of go through the same like kind of journey every time with like my mental health and just with, yeah, I know, especially as like getting to my mid 20s and that kind of thing. I just felt like, there's this rebirth. It feels like it's happening. So I wanted to kind of use my experience of the seasons in a way to kind of partially tell that story. But in terms of like the track list and how that relates, I think it does tell a really strong story of like the first track on the album is called Lost and Found. Or
Mhm.
there's a little intro, but the first song. Um and I wrote that like years and years ago about trying to kind of become more confident as an artist and trying to, again, there is like reference to the seasons as well. Like my heart is frozen and then it kind of warms and thaws as you go through the song. And so that's kind of my first attempt at like addressing what's going on up here.
Yeah.
And then the final track on the album is my most recent song that I've written about kind of my journey with mental health and with growth. So everything in between is kind of like, this is what's happened to get me to this point. And it's, anything from, like romantic disappointments or feeling frustrated with like how you're treated as a woman, like in the dating scene, for example, or like kind of shedding old friendships that are no longer serving you and everything in between. So I think it's a really kind of like wholesome look at my experience, all kind of tied together through the idea that I'm just pursuing growth and like mental wellness, I would say.
And that seems to be a common theme with a lot of people over the last especially over the last year,
Yeah.
um, to address mental health concerns and to let people know, like, we're all struggling in some aspect and we all are looking for help and there's help out there. But it
Mhm.
is nice to hear it to kind of reflect it back in some of the music so that you know that you're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's actually, I did have an artist that I was that I knew through an interview, that I had related to some of their music, and in a private conversation where we were chatting, they actually wrote that line. If they're watching this, they know who they are, so thank you once again. But they just wrote that you were not alone,
Yes.
and that just, it was so strong, just those words, that
Yeah.
I definitely want to make sure that when people are listening to these episodes and hear artists that are saying that, like, we're not all depressed. it's it just, life is hard for some people, and so it is important that people know that they're not alone out there, and having that reflected back in the music sends that message out to people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like I'm a huge believer in the fact that like the world only becomes better the more of yourself that you share.
Hmm.
Um, and that's also, kind of a theme. I had the opportunity to include my grandma's voice, who had actually passed in 2010, um, on the record, as well as my mom.
Wow.
And so they kind of tell this like really beautiful story of like, being afraid to share your voice, and then being followed up with my mom kind of telling this story about what my grandma always said to her, which was, um, your one job in this life is to figure out who you are and then share that with people. And so I think that's like it's one of my favorite elements of the album is that it kind of it does talk about not only mental health but having the being brave and being able to share who you are. And I think that's it goes so well with, if you can be brave and share your experience, like it is scary, but it matters so much to people, and it helps to take away some of the stigma of mental illness as well.
And that's a beautiful sentiment to be able to carry over generationally too. Like, it's definitely something that people today talk about a lot more. So it's nice to hear that generationally, at least within the context of your family, that's been passed on. That's a nice way of looking at things moving forward, for sure.
Yeah.
And speaking of moving forward, you do have a show coming up. I kind of already mentioned artists that you will be playing with there, but what can people look forward to over the next couple months? We're just entering some nice summer months.
Mhm.
It's early in the morning right now. The sun's out, and I'm in shorts and a t-shirt, so I can't
Oh,
complain.
look at that. It's very gloomy here, but that's okay.
Next time, I'll get you guys to drive down and visit me in Pictou County. The last two times I
Yes.
talked to somebody where it was gloomy on their end, it was sunny here. I
Oh,
think we're
it's
sharing
giving.
the same sunshine.
Yes. Oh, yeah, that would be nice. I was gonna say your weather is giving bloom. My weather is giving hurricane season.
Yeah, there you go. It's thematic for the episode
It's
anyway.
true. Yeah, so for the show, like, I'm so excited. Like, I can't highlight enough these opening artists that I have supporting me. So Lavender, Shay Pitts, actually newly with her full band, which I think is going to be absolutely incredible. It's awesome musicians in her band.
For anyone
Um,
watching this, we actually have a clip from her showcase at the ECMAs this year that's on our YouTube channel. That would be with the full band, and it was phenomenal.
So good, so good. I think and Lindsay Meisner and the Seventh Mystic, of
Hmm.
course, everybody knows they're amazing. Yeah, so I just feel like extremely honored for that. And I again, like I cannot sing their praises enough. And I think it's so cool also to have an all-female lineup of artists, which is like not something that you see a whole ton, that I've noticed anyway. So I think that is like a huge draw, especially for me. Like, I love it.
I will be a little risque here and share
Mhm.
a personal opinion that may be a little controversial depending on
Oh,
your own perspective. As a male myself, I do see all of the promotion for women out there, and
Mhm.
it's great. I love it. But I do see a lot of times in those cases, like a marketing push will be that's like, come out today to see this all woman lineup. And
True.
that's great too. And I understand it. But with this particular lineup and this particular show that you're talking about, I was just kind of picking up who it was as I was going along. And
Mhm.
it didn't even occur to me
There you
until I was
go.
talking to you. I'm like, oh, that's all women. I just knew that they
Mhm.
were all great artists. And I
Yeah.
wasn't
Well,
even associating it with like, oh, Avery has an all-woman lineup for this show.
Mhm.
I was looking like, oh wow, look at that stacked lineup. So I personally prefer to see it that
Mhm.
way.
Yeah,
But
I think
it's
that's
probably
awesome.
that I'm not carrying any guilt for being a guy in that case, right? So there's the controversial part. It's pretty tame, but
Well,
it
honestly,
is
I think
wonderful.
that's awesome. Yeah, I think like that is the goal, right? You don't want to rely on your gender or whatever to market a show.
Hmm.
Um and I think like you just said it, like this is a extremely stacked lineup of amazing artists. So it doesn't really matter what their gender is. But it is definitely a cool element to me. Where I think there's like a big element of like femininity in my music. So I think like that energy is really powerful. And I think the show will be like such a good time in part because of that as well. But yeah, so that's like a huge element of the show for me, but also um I've hired a cool player, Tom Richards as well. I don't know if you know him. He's a keyboard and he also plays like tuba and he plays trombone and he plays in the like Sunday evening at the local
I was
jazz
gonna say I knew his
cafe.
name from
Yeah.
something, and
Yeah.
I don't get there a lot, but when I do get there, if anyone ever notices me floating around at the local, I am usually with a couple people, and then I wander away, so you can never tell who I'm with. I just end up sitting with different people. I'm like, "So you're a musician, what do you do?" But when they have those sessions where it's all people dropping in and out, I pick up a lot of names, and
Yeah.
those aren't necessarily things I can go look up on Bandcamp or search on Google and get a whole history of them. So there's a lot of those names I'm familiar with, but I don't 100% know them. That's definitely a name that I recognize. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's like an incredible artist in his own right as well. He's extremely creative. And so yeah, he's playing keyboard for us at the show. We just had our first band practice with him last week, and
cool.
like I said, right, we've got the two guitars, we have the two horns, we have some synth happening. So there is a lot going on, right? But I think he was able to really seamlessly just kind of find his place and like having the keyboard obviously is like completely invaluable in like soul and R&B music, and it just adds just such a warmth to our sound as well. So
It,
I'm really excited for our set.
if you do get a chance to swing through Pictou County, and not necessarily limit it to Pictou County, just their
Mhm.
bands from here. But Sweet Serene, I don't know if you're familiar with them yet, but they're a local Pictou County band, and you will see them starting to float outside of our region a little bit. Definitely would fall into that same category as the music that you've been
Cool.
putting out to date and what Lindsay has out. And maybe not 100% in line with the same kind of music, but definitely some overlaps and parallels. Not like
Mhm.
yesterday. They
Mhm.
actually have an album coming out here now too in Glasgow.
Oh, awesome. That's
So
cool. Yeah.
there's a couple people for you to keep out to. I'm trying to coax you into
Yeah.
coming into my region so that I
Well,
can just
yeah.
I don't have to pay for gas to go see you that way.
That's right. Yeah, well, I might be in that neck of the woods. Nothing official yet, but there's stuff in the works, so maybe I'll reach out to Sweet Serene and see what they if they want to
Yeah,
hang
and
out.
more powerful females too. They're definitely some of the in my generation. They're probably younger than me, but yeah, those are some big names in our region, and I do notice them starting to bleed up into the city a little bit. So I'd like to see some collaborations down the road because I think you
Oh,
guys would all get along as far as your musical styles that definitely blend well.
um,
And for yourself, you have Hurricane Season out now, but when's the full album out, did you say?
July 7th.
July 7th. And can people buy that like through Bandcamp or is okay,
Yeah, they'll be able to purchase through Bandcamp. There's going to be a pre-save link that I'll be sharing as well.
awesome.
And there will be some CDs and hopefully down the road some vinyl as well.
Oh, I was
That's exciting.
expecting, I was gonna ask, but I wasn't expecting it. I was expecting digital only. So
Mhm.
I'm definitely gonna be keeping an eye out for some physical media for
Yes.
sure.
I'll make sure a copy gets into your hands for sure.
Awesome. And you said vinyl as well?
Yes. Yeah, I'm still kind of working out the logistics of that and it does take a while.
Yeah.
But I think to me, it's like a really important thing to have those physical copies and to be able to sit like away from my phone and listen as well. Because like I just really am so proud of this album, and I'm gonna like want to have a copy of that when I'm, you know,
Oh
90.
yeah, absolutely. You can see that some of my apartments get a little bare on one side,
Oh yeah.
and but everything else is physical media. So
Yeah.
definitely a fan.
Well, heck yeah.
And so where should people follow you online to keep up to date? Because obviously you have a show announced, you have an album announced, you have a follow-up single that's in rotation now. I'm seeing it floating around out there.
Yeah.
So you must have more stuff coming over the next couple months, and I'm sure people listening to this episode would like to follow along. Instagram probably the best place, or should they
Yeah.
go to your website?
Well, so I'll say both. So my website is averydakinmusic.com, and
Mhm.
my social media, you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Avery Dakin _.
Oh, there you go. That's an indication that I'm actually gonna do a TikTok promo for this episode then, because
Hey.
I don't always get on it because we don't always have the best traction on there, but for
I
artists
know.
that are on TikTok, I like to share.
Yeah, TikTok's just fun, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
like it. Dakota, my daughter that sometimes pops into these episodes, is TikTok master. I need to
Oh,
sit
yeah.
down and get her to show me how to get 1,000 followers like her.
It's hard.
What I need to do is tag her when I do a promo for this episode so
There
that
you
we get her
go.
followers looking at our stuff too.
All about the repost.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we are kind of winding down on
That's
time
right.
here today. So, as we wrap out the episode, I would like to play a selection for the listeners here. So, I'm assuming hurricane season where it's brand new, that's your
Mhm.
selection for today.
I would love that. Yeah.
So, shout out to Lavender as she's
Absolutely. Yeah,
featured on this
lavender.
track as well.
And I should just say a quick thank you to Alex Mead, my producer, and Stephen J. Paul, who mastered it as well. Oh,
Awesome.
and Joel Hughes McKay, who played trumpet on it. Oh my gosh.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Yes.
What I'll do too is I'll put some notes down in the description for people, and we'll try to credit as many of those names as possible down there for reference for people. But if not, next time people should bring a pen and paper to these episodes so that
Totally.
they can make notes as they listen
Absolutely.
along.
Oh my gosh, something's can you hear this?
Well,
Go on.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll definitely have to have a follow-up chat, maybe closer to the big Yarmouth trip for all the Nova Scotia musicians, as we all head to Music Week in November. But
Yeah.
definitely we'll be following your singles along, and hopefully catch you live in the near future.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I don't wanna watch you leave. Raging, pouring, storming, it's hurricane season. Batting down the hatches and come diving deep. This low pressure system's been brewing inside me. Oh please, touch me softly, like I know you want to. I need you on me, now that I've had a taste. Let me consume you. Oh, I am starving. Hope that you won't shy away from the wind and the rain. I want you to take it slow. Light a candle, hold me till it's burning low. Knuckles turning white, I need to let go of control. Tonight I'm with you, even if I can't predict tomorrow. I wanna know, will you touch me softly, like I know you want to? I need you on supposed to measure up to us. We fly so enchanting, very smoothly in the cut. Every word you speak coated in honey, busted nuts. You're selling water to a sink, and you really made me think that you wanted me, I guess. Something about the way you looked at me in your garage was something about the closeness, how you held me to your chest. Presenting as a guest, a silver lining here at best. I had them hurricanes just falling from my eyes. You knew what you was doing, didn't even act surprised. Led me to a cliff already, barely felt alive. Haunting me with superficial care and lustful ties. I can't stand in this lane no more. Your earth has dampened my flame, I know. Remember me, yeah. I just wanted to give you love and honesty. I hope that you won't shy away.